With rumors now circulating from TMZ that Sid Wilson has parted ways with Slipknot after 28 years, he becomes the latest in a long list of recent departures after Chris Fain in 2019, Craig Jones in 2023, and also Jay Weinberg in 2023, as the legendary band looks more and more like a shell of its former self. But arguably, none of those departures hurt the band as much as losing their number one and number two, Joey Jordison, one of the best drummers of all time, and Paul Gray, the heart of the band, an underrated bass player. Without these two iconic sounds on the music, Slipknot haven't sounded the same ever since. So just why were Joey Jordison and Paul Gray so important to the band? Let's get into it. Paul Gray was one of the band members who was there from the very start. In fact, he was there even before the start, as he attended Sean's wedding as a friend 3 whole years before the band even started.
There's all these real misunderstandings about who started the band or whatever, and the bottom line is it was Andy Rowell, the original singer, myself, and Paul. But Andy ended up leaving, really early in the game, and so once we were signed, it's just basically Paul and I. The press and the families and all the people that have their heads up their asses, they like to hear everything because of ego, but I'm here to tell you, my friend Paul Gray was at my wedding 3 years prior, he and I and Andy starting the band.
Paul Gray, just like pretty much all of the band members, had already endured a pretty rough childhood.
Yeah, I had a fucking crazy childhood. Crazy growing up, pretty fucked up childhood. I've been kind of living on my own since I was 14, doing my own thing and everything. Living with friends, homeless. Had my first actual apartment when I was almost 17, 16 and 9 months. I grew up a poor, we had no money, living in shitty, roach-infested, apartments my whole life, so.
Paul originally only played the guitar, and he'd been doing it since he was 12, thanks to his older brother.
Let's see here. I started playing guitar first. I wasn't a bass player at first. I played guitar. I started playing when I was 12, I believe 12, 13 years old. I have an older brother, Jay. He, was always into music. He was a big music guy. Always cranking out Black Sabbath and Leonard Skinner and, Zeppelin and the Doors and the Stones and the Beatles and bands like that, Alice Cooper. And Kiss, I was a really big Kiss fan. I used to dress up like Gene Simmons or Ace Frehley, depending on what year, every year.
Paul Gray didn't even touch a bass guitar until the formation of Slipknot.
Well, a funny story how I got to playing bass is, I played guitar when I moved to Iowa, and I didn't have any friends, didn't know anybody. I went up to the local music store that was right around my house, and I went in and I started talking to those guys. And I overheard this guy talking about needing a bass player for their band, and they did covers and stuff like that. But the bands that they said they covered, they did Slayer and Metallica songs, stuff like that. And so not knowing anybody and just wanting to meet people, I told them I could play bass, even though I never played a bass in my life, and I didn't own a bass, and I had no money to buy a bass. But I told them I could play bass, and that I'd come and rehearse with them. And one of my brother's friends had a weird right-handed bass, which I strung left-handed, and used this little practice amp. And I went down there and, I played with them. And I didn't actually know any of the bass lines or anything like that, but I knew all the guitar parts, so I just faked it and played all the guitar parts. So,
Paul was one of a long list of musicians at the time who were self-taught and joined a band playing an instrument they had never touched before. Joey Jordison also somehow falls into this category, as he actually started out playing guitar. As he says here, I started out playing guitar at my grandpa's house when I was really young. I got used to it and really liked it. I was playing guitar in a band when I was 10 and my bandmates were older, but the drummer couldn't keep up and was sloppy. It just got frustrating. So one day I said, I'll do it until we find another drummer. I started working on my drumming, but I never stopped playing the guitar either. I just kept getting better at the drums and it became my first love.
See, that's kind of how I started. That's what got me into music when I was really young. talking about like when I'm 5 years old, when I started playing music. I started on guitar around 5, and I transitioned to drums around 7, but I was still in classic rock. It wasn't until I heard Kiss Alive is when I started getting into that. That was my first cassette I ever bought, was Kiss Alive, just because of the cover.
Yeah.
And I was changed forever then. So, and from then I just became completely engulfed in metal.
Jordison was introduced into the band by Paul Gray, who was instrumental to realizing Sean's vision of a metal supergroup.
And when we first started, Sean actually played the kit, the sit-down kit, and Andy played percussion. Sean kind of wanted to move to percussion and do like more of a different thing. So, you know, I had always been friends with Joey, so, you know, we decided to give Joey a call. Joey came out and he heard the stuff and he just loved it, man. And
Joey would add, I worked in a gas station on the graveyard shift for 10 hours a night. Sean and Paul would come down and we would come up with all these ideas. We scared everyone away because we'd blast Obituary and Deicide all night while coming up with our own ideas. It was like cramming for a test that took place 4 years later when we recorded our first album. Some drummer might say, I don't want people stepping on my toes and getting in my face. I'm not like that. That percussion drives me. It makes me want to be a better player. It makes them want to be better players. We all keep on our toes. No one slacks because you have 2 other drummers looking at you at all times. I love having it this way. The more drums, the better. In many ways, from that point on, Joey Jordison and Paul Gray were the heart and soul of Slipknot. That's not just the opinion of a few people familiar with the band. Speaking in 2001, prior to the release of Iowa, Joey details how the magic is made. I handle a lot of the songwriting even before I think about putting drums to anything. Paul and I write most of the music. We usually get a good song structure going and then we'll show it to the guitarists. They might throw a riff in or change some chords, and once guitarists Mick and Jim, Paul and I have the basic core of a song, the band thinks about the percussion parts. A lot of times, the percussionists will come in and see what I'm doing and feed off of it a little bit, or I'll have an idea and say, maybe we can go here. Sometimes they mimic what I do, sometimes they don't. Together, Gray and Jordison came up with a lot of the core ideas of Slipknot, from their name to their signature sound, and that's down to how technically proficient both guys were with their instruments. Paul Gray was a big believer in simplicity. Since he wrote a lot of the songs and was himself formerly a guitarist, a lot of his bass playing was focused on tying the sound together. Often on Slipknot tracks, the bass sound would be subtle, but make up the core of the track as demonstrated by his performance of their hit song, Duality, accompanied by only drums. Underrated as he may have been, Paul was nevertheless highly respected by his peers, even getting to play alongside Korn. Joey Jordison, on the other hand, was high-key one of the best drummers in all of metal music, and he wasn't a stranger to wild moments on stage. A fan favorite was this rotating drum rig he had on Slipknot live shows during the mid-2000s. Joey would play insane drum solos upside down and strapped to car seats. Joey was well used to wild displays like this. In fact, at the time, Slipknot shows had become something of an extreme sport. In this quote right here, one time, Sean broke a pipe over a keg. The pipe broke in half, flew in the air, spun around, and cracked me on the head and cut me open. A huge cut. And I've pulled my drums down on top of him 100 times. I have scars all over my body to prove it. There have been broken ribs and fingers and lots of stitches on all of us. Sean's whole knee is bandaged up right now, and he can barely walk. When we get on stage, something just comes out of us, dude. It's like a war zone. I can't even put it into words. In June 2004, Metallica was set to headline Download Festival, but they showed up an hour late and without drummer Lars Ulrich, who was ill and lying in a hospital bed in Hamburg, Germany. Needing someone to fill in, it would be none other than Joey, who would step up and steal the show. Joey was previously in a Metallica cover band, so he knew a couple of the songs better than the back of his hand. His performance that night was so good that Metallica fans and metal fans in general still joke that Joey was the best drummer Metallica ever had. And they're only really half joking. If you had met Joey backstage around the set, you wouldn't have guessed it. Corey, speaking about how nervous Joey was during that set, said, "We were back there with Joey, watching it. It was so surreal to watch Joey playing with Metallica because we all grew up listening to them. And Joey was shitting bricks. I mean, he had his mask on, but every time he'd come back and he would pull his mask off, he would just be like, 'How am I doing? How am I doing?' I'm like, 'You're killing it.' Me, Paul, Clown, we were all standing there cheering him on, and they ended up throwing different songs at him that they hadn't rehearsed. They threw all the Misfits shit at him, and he knew it. They would have probably kept him up there all night if they could have. He played the majority of the set. That to me was such a amazing moment for him that it was cool to be back there sharing that with him. It was a special little almost like that's the moment you know you've made it. You're seeing this reflection of respect from arguably your biggest influence, your biggest peer. Them signing off on you like that had to have been massive for him. And I remember him telling me it was such a blur that he didn't really remember anything until he watched the video back. I don't know if they expected it, but he went in there and showed not only the band but all of their fans not only the level of respect that we have for them and the music, but that we can hold our own. And I think that was a big moment. It was a big part of that. Joey managed to remain mostly down to earth despite his genius. He was really hyper-focused on the music, and there was nobody he had better chemistry with than Paul Gray. In fact, here's a studio session of the making of Iowa. So don't
be going like, nothing like that. No.
It's no surprise they got along so well with each other, considering they were best friends already, pretty close before the band had ever started. Paul held a lot of appreciation for Joey.
Joey's the best drummer in the world, hands down, and my best friend, so there you go.
And the both of them had underlying love for the band itself.
Hey, get that guy out of here. The guy with the nose. Look at the guy with the nose. See? No, I'm not gonna sign it. Beat it. Whatever, dude. What? No! Where's Smitty? No, sorry about that.
Okay.
That's a crazy fan that wants to be the nose guy.
So, what does Slipknot mean to you, Paul?
It's my life, that's it. It's everything. It's everything to me. Without Slipknot, I'd be probably sleeping on someone's couch working at the old.
Of course, it's still the original 9 guys from the first record, and it's a lot of bands don't even last one record without a member quitting or something. We have 9 people.
And then it takes us a while to kind of all come back and connect sometimes, but the love and the magic will never disappear. Not with us 9. We're the only 9 that can do that, and we're still together. Mm-hmm. That's another thing is all 9 of us are still together. 9 people. 3-piece bands don't even stay together,
Right. Or have the same membership running.
Yeah, so that tells you something right there.
But in spite of how committed and successful the band members were, there's a darkness there that haunted them even before joining the band. Their complicated and stressful personal lives were not made easier by constantly touring and having to coexist with 8 other people. There was undeniable friction.
Because I was like, yo, you're late. I carried your drum set up. Don't do it again. I'm going to kick it down the stairs. And he's like, I'd like to see it. We were bros. Yeah. I wasn't.
And you were a kid. Was there ever a time where you felt like the band is about to break up?
To be honest, there's been times, where I thought, I don't know if it's going to happen, and it was never anything. I've never ever wanted to quit the band or leave the band, so it's always been, worried about other people, if they were going to leave or do some other things, and that's just, whatever, instead of, and we were still actually really solid, I think it was just a lot of a lot of people just kind of, you know, tripping out about different little small shit. And when we actually talked and got together, realized that, you know, everything else wasn't that big of a deal.
You know, we're taking time off because now we know it's good. It's good that we need to take time off and let it go away for a while. Let it kind of settle, and then instead of rushing right back and making another record, kind of like we did Iowa, we know that we need to kind of, just, take a little break, and then once we get back together, we'll all be anxious and hungry again, and that's exactly what's going to happen, because I'm already getting to that point.
Right.
I'm already having Slipknot withdrawal bad.
Corey Taylor had been teasing the band's demise in interviews as far back as 2002 in the run-up to Volume 3. Every member of the band was struggling in their own way. They always had been. That turmoil was what gave birth to the music. In a way, the masks they wore was a way of channeling all that chaos. As Joey said, not at all. We're trying to look like ourselves from the inside. The mask I wear represents what this music makes me feel like inside. And no one picked anyone's mask for them. When we put the masks on, we go into a deeper, darker place.
The masks were pretty much a result of two different things. One, the way the music was actually making us feel, because the overall originality that we were trying to spark in the early days led us to this persona. And also, Sean was really the first guy that kind of sparked it with a song that's on our first record called Tattered and Torn. Sean brought his original clown mask to practice and always would wear that during that song. So then the actual mask that I wore on the first two records, I had in my closet. So I brought it, and then every guy started bringing.
If it ever came to the point where we were gonna actually even consider seriously taking off the masks, I think that would be that would be it, because it's such a huge part of what we do. I mean, this is really a way to tap into that inner mask. It's that guy inside that's had to deal with every little bit of pain in your life, the guy that you choose to put forward, and it's like, you deal with this because I can't handle this. That guy comes out and he gets to have his say, and it's deeply gratifying.
Against all odds, the band managed to stay together through their fourth album release thanks to a short break from the band. It seemed no force was powerful enough to divide them until one unfortunate day in May 2010.
We decided to give Joey a call. Joey came out and he heard the stuff and he just loved it, man. And so he was in, and that was kind of like the start of Slipknot. We had a old guitar player, Josh, who was in that first band that I joined. We got Mick in there. I tried a couple other different people and different lineup arrangements, but we ended up getting Mick and we ended up getting Corey after we did a first demo, and with our old singer. And we'd always known Corey from his other bands, and he was a pretty obnoxious dude, but he could really sing. We actually did a battle of the bands against them, and like we won. We whooped their ass. But Corey, he has a great voice, and so we were demoing some new songs for a new demo, and we asked him to come out to sing.
Paul Gray was gone way too soon before even turning 40. He left behind his partner, Brenna Gray, and a daughter. Brenna, alongside Paul's brother and his bandmates, held an emotionally charged press conference where they formally broke the news about his passing.
I'd just like to say that I miss my brother so much. This is very hard for me right now. I just want to say that I love you, Paul, very much. You'll be sorely missed by the world over. God bless you, and thank you for all the great times that we had together. I love you so much.
Paul is my husband, an amazing person, and I just want people to remember him for just that. And his daughter will remember him for the way he was. And I just thank everybody for being here. And thank you.
Speaking more candidly in 2025, Sean the Clown would speak about how difficult it was to move on and practically credit his entire career to Paul Gray. Here's a quote. "He's the whole reason I'm sitting here. He hijacked me from my art career. So many people innately wanted to say so blindly, well, you know, Gray would want you to go on. And I wouldn't say much. And then finally, I had enough. And I'm like, did anyone think that maybe I might not want to go on without my friend?" People often speak the kindest of others in times of death, but going through Paul's life, you'd have a hard time, a tough time, finding anyone who had a bad word to say about him either before or after he tragically passed away. Producer Ross Robinson, who worked with the band on their first album, recounts his experience of him.
I think I was closest to him and Joey, and just pure love. The dude was the genius, you know, he was the main riff writer. And loving, a couple weeks before he died, he called me up, and I was driving on Washington Boulevard by Taco Bell Thai, up in that neighborhood. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm driving on," and I told him where I was for some reason. He goes, "Oh, my grandmother that raised me just died, and that's where she lived when I was a kid." I'm like, "Dude, she's right now telling you that she loves you." He's like, he started sobbing on the phone. He's like, "Yes." Because it's impossible for you to call and me not know and give you my location. And, my God, he was just like, oh. And then he goes, I'm having a baby.
Whoa.
I'm like, oh my God, you know, and that was our relationship. It was all about love and so, and then right after the baby announcement, he died.
Yeah, it happened right after, huh?
Slipknot had initially planned for a return around 2012 or 2013. Many didn't know if the band would be able to continue or if they would want to, which is why it came as such a massive shock in December 2013 when Joey, of all people, decided to get out of the band. Slipknot released a statement reading, "To our maggots and fans around the world, it is with great pain but quiet respect that for personal reasons, Joey Jordison and Slipknot are parting ways. We all wish Joey the best in whatever his future holds. We understand that many of you will want to know how and why this has come to be, and we will do our best to respond to these questions in the near future. It is our love for all of you, as well as for the music we create, that spurs us to continue on and move forward with our plans for releasing new material in the next year. We hope that all of you will come to understand this, and we appreciate your continued support while we plan the next phase of the future of Slipknot. Thank you." No one quite knew what was going on, and the confusion got worse about 2 weeks later when Joey put out his own statement on social media. I would like to start the new year by addressing the recent rumors and speculation regarding my departure from Slipknot. I want to make it very clear that I did not quit Slipknot. This band has been my life for the last 18 years, and I would never abandon it or my fans. This news has shocked and blindsided me as much as it has all of you. While there is much I would like to say, I must remain silent to further details at this time. I would like to thank you all for your unwavering love and support and wish everyone a very happy and healthy new year. And we wouldn't get much more on this for quite a while. Meanwhile, Slipknot had gone ahead to replace Joey with Jay Weinberg. In late 2014, however, fans began to speculate that Joey was kicked out over substance abuse in relation to the death of Paul Gray, which was allegedly an overdose. The speculation came about after a 2014 September exclusive interview with Metal Hammer, where Corey said, "I can't talk too much about it because we're going through the legalities of everything right now and settling everything, but it's when a relationship hits that T section and one person's going one way and you're going the other. And try, as you might, to either get them to go your way or try and go their way, at some point, you've got to go in the direction that works for you. This is me speaking in the broadest terms with respect to Joey. I guess to sum it up, it was one of the hardest decisions we ever made. We're all happy right now, and we hope that he is. I've known him since '91, and that was before we were in bands together, and he's incredibly talented. He's just in a place in his life right now that's not where we are, in the nicest terms. Joey, for his part, was never too far away from the music. He founded a new group called Vemic. He also launched another band, Sinsanum, a metal supergroup featuring Attila Sahar of Mayhem, along with former Dath and Chimera member Sean Satorsky, Dragon Force bassist Frederic Leclerc on guitar, and Seth Haymoth on bass. In the summer of 2016, Jordison won a Golden God Award, and emotional, he spoke about his Slipknot career that came to an end, including a serious health condition that no one knew about. Towards the end of my career in Slipknot, and I want you all to give praise to them as well, we accomplished a lot in life, every one of them, and I wish them nothing but luck and the best of praises, because what we created in the basements of Des Moines, Iowa will never be matched. It's one thing that is absolutely unbeatable. I love those guys very much. Towards the end of my career in Slipknot, I got really sick with a horrible disease called transverse myelitis. I lost my legs. I couldn't play anymore. It was a form of multiple sclerosis, which I don't wish on my worst enemy. I got myself back up, and I got myself in the gym, and I got myself back in therapy to beat this shit. And if I could do it, you could do it. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, more than fucking anything. To people with multiple sclerosis, transverse myelitis, or anything like that, I am living proof that you can beat that shit. And metal and all of these fans will do it for you. This is the world right here. You can beat this shit, no joke. Just the fact that metal lives in your heart, you can accomplish anything. While most had assumed it was drugs, it was actually a debilitating physical health issue. Further to that, whilst there was a falling out of sorts between Joey and the band, he remained entirely open to the idea of a reunion. Although he would describe his dismissal from the band as cowardly in an interview with Metal Hammer, no band meeting? None. Anything from management? No, nothing. All I got was a stupid email saying I was out of the band, that I busted my ass my whole life to create. That's exactly what happened, and it was hurtful. I didn't deserve that shit after what I'd done and everything I'd been through. They got confused about my health issues, and obviously, even I didn't know what it was at first. They thought I was up on drugs, which I wasn't at all. I've been through so many things with those guys, and I love them very much. What's hurtful is the way it went down was not right. That's all I want to say. The way they did it was cowardly. It was up. No Slipknot fan enjoyed finding out that one of the most legendary drummers in metal was fired in an email. Regardless of missing context, that just came off as disrespectful. However, at the same time, Joey was catching some heat himself because in November 2016, Chris Norris, a guitarist for his former Scar the Martyr project and the brand new Vimic group, put out a comment on Facebook announcing his exit and taking shots at Joey for being unpleasant. When I decided to quit Vemic, I did it on my own terms for various reasons I will not reveal here. I left everything there. My guitars, my clothes, my life. Due to legal obligation because a certain someone feels that after I wrote and recorded his whole CD, and on top of that, 31 songs plus, I am not entitled to what is mine. Guess what? Tonight, I got one of my guitars back. Come after me. I am only in this for my son. Come after me when you sent me a text that said, your son, you lost me, and I will find a band and move on. I am over you, and I cannot wait until the rest of the world knows. I told you I would not hesitate to say my piece. You cannot hide behind money. Money is not the be-all, end-all. Truth, family. That is. And for the fact you called me family, you. Norris would call these issues, quote, ultimately personal, and never go into more details of the falling out due to his respect for Jordison. Joey opened up more about his dismissal from Slipknot in a January 2017 interview with Access. Asked why he was dismissed, he said, "That's a really great question, and that's a hard question to answer as I know that everything is publicized right now, so I've got to really watch my words. The thing is, I got visited in the hospital by one member of the band when they all knew I was in there. When someone's in the hospital, be it a family member or anyone that has something wrong with them, if you love them, then you visit them. I didn't get visited by anyone, and next thing you know, I got exited from the band. And I don't know why, I don't understand what the deal was. There's been a bunch of rumors and stuff like, why it was, and it is absolutely untrue. I have all the documents and pictures and photo albums that cover everything that happened like an encyclopedia. All the documents from being in there with this condition to all my rehab, all the way to getting back with doctors and getting back to what I'm doing. But that's okay. Life takes you down weird paths. And Joey was extremely open to going down whatever weird path life threw him down. He remained committed to music almost to a fault. By 2018, he was balancing two of his side projects, Vemic and Sinsanum. the latter of which even put out an album containing some of the heaviest music Joey had ever done. Considering the severity of his health issues in the past, there might have been a concern for him, but he reassured everyone at the time that he was feeling better than ever.
I'm completely 100% back, stronger than I've ever been. And I'm not just saying that. That sounds like a cheesy line, I understand. But it took me a long time, man, like to recover and, you know, get my strength back, because, I mean, I got hit with something that, I've never felt anything like this, you know. We all know the flu, the common cold, you know, all that type of stuff. There's nothing like that. And I woke up one day and my back was completely on fire. Next thing, my legs were wobbling. Next thing you know, I collapsed. I lost my legs. It was the scariest fucking thing I've ever went through in my life. And I busted my ass, got the right trainers, and I was not gonna play drums again. You know, because this is what I'm on Earth for. And you know, I'll have, you know, a great lady that, you know, supported me, and killer trainers, you know, at Lifetime Gym and Absolute Performance Therapy here in Des Moines and Waukee. And man, failure was not an option whatsoever. Because, like, I'm here to play music. That's what I've been put on Earth for. And I think it was, honestly, in a weird way, it was a life lesson more than anything. And I wouldn't change it for anything. It sucked that it happened. But the fact that I beat it and came back from it, because a lot of people just don't. They just don't. And because I just was not, you know, gonna let this beat me. And, you know, being able to be healthy and being able to, you know, record these albums, you know, that you hear, you know, through Sinsatum and you know, Gimmick as well. It's just a testimony, because I cannot let anything beat me when it comes to music. I'm not gonna, you know, I have to play. So, like, when you have the power of music within your soul and your heart, nothing can stop you.
Yeah.
Music is actually, you know, really what really got me through a lot of it, because I'm like, there's no way this thing is going to beat me. There's no way that I'm not going to be back out on tour. There's no way I'm not going to play drums. It's not going to happen. You know, and I'd ask the doctors and stuff like that. I'd be like, you know, I'm going to be able to walk again, and, you know, and play drums. And, like, honestly, the doctors would look at me and they wouldn't be able to be able to tell me. And from that moment, I knew that I was going to beat it, and I was not going to let anything, like, stop me.
Yeah, at the same, there was a doctor who was...
Nothing could stop Joey Jordison from playing drums. You'd have to pry the drumsticks from his cold, dead hands. And unfortunately, in 2021, that's exactly what happened.
At the age of 46, a rep for his family confirmed the sad news to multiple outlets. The drummer passed away, quote, peacefully in his sleep on Monday, but his family did not specify his cause of death. Joey's death has left us with empty hearts and feelings of indescribable sorrow. To those that knew Joey, understood his quick wit, his gentle personality, giant heart, and his love for all things family and music. The family of Joey have asked that friends, fans, and media understandably respect our need for privacy and peace at this incredibly difficult time, the family said in a statement. Slipknot seemingly paid tribute to the late musician by sharing a black captionless square on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Jordison was known.
Another piece of the Slipknot soul had passed away, and although Joey hadn't been in the band for almost 8 years, it hurt nonetheless. For some, that meant it hurt even more. Tributes poured in from the likes of Metallica, Slaughter to Prevail, Dave Lombardo, Morbid Angel, and many more, reinforcing his undeniable legacy. His current band, Sasonum, put out a statement of their own, which perfectly embodied the worldwide sentiment, whilst also raising a few eyebrows about the cause of death. We are deeply saddened by the loss of our friend and brother, Joey Jordison. He was, of course, one of the most influential drummers in the genre, completely rewriting the game of metal drumming, and it was truly an honor to share even just a small part of that with him. He brought something to the table that no other musician could, and his love and passion for music was unmatched in a world of jaded artists. For us, Joey was family, and like family, we argued and cried, but mostly laughed and cared deeply for one another. His public image had a serious tone with an evil exterior, yet he had the biggest heart, and we were lucky to be able to see the softer side of him. Joey also had his demons, and nothing hurts more than knowing that we did everything in our power to help and couldn't get through to him. He never felt he was better than anyone and would go out of his way to put everything and everyone above his own needs. Our hearts go out to Amanda, to his family, and to the true friends that were checking in on him. And to all our fans and friends who reached out to us in this time of mourning, thank you. Considering everything, moving on will be difficult at first, especially since we had already started writing the new album, but we will persevere and will honor his legacy in everything we do moving forward. This next album will be dedicated to the memory of him, as that's what Joey would have wanted. Hails and horns, as Joey would say. We miss you, Jay Sanum, and we will love you forever. The Jordison family estate launched a Kickstarter in 2025 to finally release Open Your Omen, the album made by Joey's side project, Vemic, in 2016. The Kickstarter raised $100,000 in only 30 days, and the album came out later that year. Ultimately, similar to Paul Gray, Joey's legacy on the metal scene is unmistakable. These two guys were ultimately the reason why hundreds, if not thousands of kids picked up a bass guitar or a pair of drumsticks for the first time. Their legacy is also inseparable from that of Slipknot, even though the band has now put out almost the same number of albums without the pair. Slipknot may not have always or ever been a well-oiled metal machine, but they had 9 supremely talented and dedicated musicians. Without the literal number 1 and 2, Slipknot could never remain the same. Okay, Suicide Silence was defined by 2 eras. In the 2000s, they weren't just one of the biggest bands in deathcore. Suicide Silence were the heart and soul of the genre, releasing cult classic albums, going mainstream, and putting on one sick live show after the other. Then, in the 2010s, the band's legacy would be altered by the infamous Tee self-titled album done without the face of deathcore himself, Mitch Lucker. An album so bad that it became a meme, and the band members had to call it a social experiment.
Fucking shock that internet system, dude. They don't have enough shit to talk shit on, dude. We had to give them something to really talk shit on.
Yeah, dude. I'm stoked on it, actually. I wake up every day, I read a couple of hateful comments.
Well, that's gonna be my question, is like, how do you guys...
It's really cool to just see this social experiment happen right now. It's.
So how did Suicide Silence go from embodying deathcore to making the most hated deathcore album of all time?
It's like when you try to like fart really quietly.
Let's look into it. Suicide Silence is a band whose inception you can trace all the way back to 2002. Chris Garza was the main founding member, but the band really came together when he met Mitch Lucker. The band did exist before Mitch. In 2003, Suicide Silence, under a very different lineup, put out the Death Awaits demo, which was relatively well received. However, the band wouldn't take the shape until Mitch joined up, bringing along his close friend, Josh Goddard, to play drums, who was living in his closet at the time. In 2004, they made demos which oddly sampled sound bits from Family Guy. It was extremely unusual at the time.
Tom Hanks, that's it. Ah, funny guy, Tom Hanks. Everything he says is a stitch.
I have AIDS.
People will say, my God, I love those old recordings, like the song Till the Bubbles Stop, and the first version or the second version of Stand Strong. And I'm like, get out of here. I cringe. I can't listen to that stuff.
Following the demo, guitarist Rick Ash also joined the band before the release of their 2005 EP. Rick was formerly in another local band called Torn Within, and he would return to it after eventually leaving Suicide Silence. These bands, alongside others like All Shall Perish, were making music at a time when a lot of heavy experimentation was going on in the metal scene. Deathcore was the hideous byproduct of death metal and hardcore, and so as a result, they were looked down on by the more purist metal scene. Frontman Eddie Ermita would later go on to say, it resonated with a young crowd, and anytime a young crowd gets interested, the death metal elite feel threatened. That's the reality of it. You gotta think that death metal originated with kids that weren't really welcome anywhere, the nerds that got made fun of in high school. So, once you find a place where you're cool, the first thing you revert to is the kind of prison system upbringing that we're all used to.
And the one person had posted, "It sounds like hardcore kids trying to play death metal and doing a piss poor job."
That's pretty accurate.
Looking back, it makes me grin, uncontrollably.
At the time, these records and the band itself lived or died, depending on how well they could perform live, or even all the way back then, Suicide Silence was an unbelievable live act, with Mitch Lucker being one of the most charismatic vocalists deathcore would ever see.
Playing live was an element to us at the time that I think made us stand out. And Mitch being like, or it was you, like, just make sure you go crazy when you're playing. And I was like, okay, well, it's easy to do that when everyone else in the band is already doing it.
Suicide Silence played shows wherever they could, in basements, backyards, and even kitchens. After the release of their 2005 debut, they took themselves on an independent national tour without a label, which was pretty impressive at the time.
From that point, we just started touring on our own. I think we did like almost a year straight of touring around the U.S., and even we took ourselves overseas by ourselves, no label, just to see what we can do, I did a headliner just on a shitty EP, and it went really well.
We basically
and
headlined for a year.
Yeah, we headlined all over the United States, all over Canada, all over Europe, by ourselves, no label.
Before the tour, Rick Ash had left the band and was replaced by guitarist Mark Haleman. During the tour, Suicide Silence had gotten relatively popular online, particularly on MySpace. And to paint a picture of what that looked like, in May 2006, Josh Goddard left the band and would eventually be replaced by Alex Lopez. These were some of the comments under the Lamb Goat post announcing that fact. There's a difference between having a MySpace to further your band and having your entire reputation revolve around it. With no releases/touring, everyone knows who they are. No respect from me. Deathcore is the new Screamo. Oh man, what will MySpace ever do if this band doesn't find a full replacement? This goes without saying, but I wish they'd all quit. The whole band should just call it quits. Horrible effing band. Everyone on here always hates on every band that is posted. I usually give all of them the benefit of the doubt and give them a listen with open ears, but holy piss, this band is so bland. Most boring shit ever. You get the point. All the time, Suicide Silence had just announced a tour with other outfits like All Shall Perish, Light This City, Too Pure to Die, and Nights Like These. Going back to the Josh breakup though, it was definitely a rough one. Josh had decided to bring his partner on tour as he attempted to balance work, relationship, and touring by simply doing it all at once. This turned out to be a bad decision, negatively affecting all involved to the point where the rest of the band had to give Josh an ultimatum. This was a messy breakup, and Josh wouldn't speak to any of his former bandmates afterwards for over 6 years.
I think the first and maybe the only California Metal Fest. I don't know if there were more, but that turned out to be my last show. We had a meeting, came together, and you guys basically said, look, dude, like, you got to make a decision. And I don't want to speak for you, but I think that you knew, Jerry knew, Mitch knew what I was going to choose.
Yes.
But I just was so stubborn. I just would not, I couldn't let it go. I couldn't be the adult and the adult who I thought I was. I couldn't just stop and say, you're right. You guys, you're right. I need to work. I need to have an income. My lady is here. She is everything to me. I thought I could merge the two. It was painful. It was a painful breakup, and so painful that I didn't speak to you or Mitch or anybody for 6 years. And unfortunately, the reason we...
However, their first official album would be released in 2007, the album that would define Suicide Silence and Mitch's legacy, The Cleansing, containing tracks like Unanswered, The Price of Beauty, Bludgeoned to Death, No Pity for a Coward, Girl of Glass, which has one of the sickest breakdowns you'll ever hear on a deathcore song. The album was an instant classic, not just putting Suicide Silence on the map, but the entire genre of deathcore. It was a mainstream success, peaking at number 97 on the Billboard 200. They became the deathcore band, or at the very least, one of the top 3 or 4 deathcore bands which others wanted to copy. They released their next album, No Time to Bleed, in 2009, and it too was a massive hit, containing bangers like Disengage, Wake Up, and Smoke. It wasn't as critically acclaimed as The Cleansing, but that's a really high bar, and it was obvious they wanted to have fun with this one. The band was having the time of their lives, non-stop touring, playing on TV, making the music they enjoyed. There was nothing they enjoyed more than playing live, as Mitch loved the fans and never missed a chance to praise them.
Is there anything you like to say to your fans?
Keep headbanging, keep listening. We fucking love it. Without fans, we're not shit, so keep doing it. We have some of the best, most loyal fans. The reason they're standing out there wearing Suicide Silence shirts in the rain, waiting for us to play, it's like amazing loyal fans we've had, and we always have had, so we appreciate them. We love them.
In the summer of 2011, they released their third studio album, Black Crown, and it was once again a slightly different record from anything that had come before without fundamentally changing the sound of what made the band so special to so many fans. Mitch talked about how this was the most mature album they've ever done.
This record's really my head like cracked open and just poured on the paper. Like my thoughts, the way I feel about things, not so much trying to make people feel bad for what they believe in or anything like that. It's like, it's way more personal. I mean, I had the birth of my daughter. She's 4 now, but that completely changed a lot of the like views and like thoughts I had on things. Everything that all the other Suicide Silence records have ever lacked, this one has, and has tons of it. So it's definitely the most mature record we've ever done. So we actually focused on writing songs, not just writing 100 riffs and putting one riff after the next and then calling it when it's done. It's like this, they're actual songs, there's repetition, there's catchiness.
The album contained some of the biggest hits till this day, so it was overall a success, even though they wanted to be less technical on this one than on No Time to Bleed. With each live show, they were having fun and were clearly one of the staples of deathcore alongside Job for a Cowboy and Whitechapel, which is why it was such a tragedy when something terrible happened in November 2012.
This record's really my head like cracked open and just poured on the paper. Like my thoughts, the way I feel about things, not so much trying to make people feel bad for what they believe in or anything like that. It's like, it's way more personal. I mean, I had the birth of my daughter. She's 4 now, but that completely changed a lot of the like views and like thoughts I had on things. Everything that all the other Suicide Silence records have ever lacked, this one has, and has tons of it. So it's definitely the most mature record we've ever done. So we actually focused on writing songs, not just writing 100 riffs and putting one riff after the next and then calling it when it's done. It's like this, they're actual songs, there's repetition, there's catchiness.
To honor his memory, Suicide Silence put on a memorial show on December 21st, 2012, to benefit his daughter, Kennedy Lucker's future education funds. The show was titled Ending is the Beginning, in reference to one of their earlier songs, and was held at the Fox Theater. Guest vocalists volunteered to play different songs, and it was a beautiful performance from everyone, especially Whitechapel's Phil Bozeman. At a time like this, many were unsure if the band was going to continue at all, even contemplating that a breakup would be the right thing to do. But for the band, there was never any doubt.
Twice in my life where like a thought entered in my head and literally that's just what's gonna happen. Like when the band first started, like there was the vision was there and it never wavered. Unfortunately, the second time that happened was literally the moment Mitch died. The first thought that popped in my head was the band's not stopping. There's no way.
And so, Eddie Armida, legendary vocalist from All Shall Perish and one of the guest performers from the memorial show, joined the band. This was not a seamless transition, far from it. At first, Armida proposed being the frontman for both All Shall Perish and Suicide Silence, but that didn't last very long before things started to get sour within All Shall Perish, with members feeling like Eddie was prioritizing Suicide Silence over them. Eddie was eventually kicked out of his former band, and late in 2013, he wanted to make it clear that it wasn't his fault. The full-time aspect for Suicide Silence was always part of the deal. Just know that I did everything in my power to stay in All Shall Perish and work both projects. The ASP boys will say that I quit when I decided to take the reins in SS. I will say that I was asked to step away by my bandmates because they didn't want my schedule with SS to interfere with their future. Either way, All Shall Perish has my heart and soul built into it, and I will always support the work we did together. Then All Shall Perish would release their side of the story to make it known how difficult a position they were put in. I first heard of Eddie potentially joining Suicide Silence in March while we were on tour in Japan. When he first brought it up, he made it seem as if he was only considering recording with them, but then as he further explained everything, it became very clear that he wanted to join Suicide Silence. Everyone in that room had the same reaction. How are you going to possibly have time to do both bands? Eddie reassured us a dozen times over that both bands would be able to coexist and work together with one another, with him as the vocalist of both bands. As we had always trusted Eddie before, after a lot of long conference calls, we gave him the benefit of the doubt and decided to wait till there was an actual scheduling conflict and cross that bridge then. We already had Metallica's Orion Music and our own MTL, South of the Border tour on the books, so we went ahead with Eddie for those shows, and they all turned out very well. It seemed like maybe everything would actually work out okay. Then, after Eddie was officially in Suicide Silence, but before it went public, we got an offer from Death Angel to play 2 or 3 shows with them, all in California. Eddie in particular wanted to do these shows and pushed hardest for them, so we confirmed them. Then a week or 2 later, he tells our management that he actually can't do the shows because of Suicide Silence. That's when Suicide Silence's management informed us of all the things All Shall Perish would and would not be allowed to do. All Shall Perish could not play a show until Eddie was well established as the new singer of Suicide Silence. Suicide Silence's management told us that they would have to be well into their new album and touring cycle before All Shall Perish could be seen again with Eddie. That is easily a year of All Shall Perish not being allowed to do anything, possibly more than a year. There were other rules too, but this one was huge. When we heard this, we immediately all got on the phone with Eddie and asked him how him being in both bands could ever work, especially after this whole Death Angel thing. Eddie still insisted it could work, but also maintained that Suicide Silence would be his priority. We asked Eddie if he was quitting, and he said, "No, I'm not. If you want me out of All Shall Perish, you'll have to fire me." Now, I ask all of you reading this, both All Shall Perish fans and Suicide Silence fans, what would happen if you worked at Starbucks and you told your boss that you took a job at Coffee Bean across the street, that Coffee Bean would be your new priority, and that you wouldn't be able to pick up a single shift at Starbucks for at least a year or more, followed by, "But I'm not quitting." Regardless of how it happened and who was at fault though, Eddie was now a full-time member of Suicide Silence, and he would go on to be the voice of their 2014 album, You Can't Stop Me, an album which honored Mitch's memory and served as a direct statement from Garza and the band to the world.
Just to ingrain in people what kind of person Mitch was. His search history is literally like 2012, earthquakes, conspiracy stuff, and then I went to his notepad and literally the first thing that popped up was You Can't Stop Me. And another one of those things that set the tone for the years to come.
Fans weren't overly delighted by the album, but it served as an emotional cleanser and good closure for the Mitch Lucker era. Plus, the music on it was as raw and visceral as the SS material they had all come to love. All things that can't be said about what would come next. Their most hated project ever, the self-titled album.
2015, we said, we don't want to fucking tour anymore. We want to go home and write music because we had a sense of like something maybe we had felt sterile or something. We finished You Can't Stop Me, we were proud of it, it's cool, but we knew we didn't do what we were like needing to do with our
lives.
Our lives, our fucking, the fire, the creativity, whatever you want to call it. And we told everybody we don't want to tour anymore. When we said we didn't want to tour anymore, Ross Robinson showed up at our practice.
In order to gauge how and why the backlash to the 2017 self-titled album was so strong, we need to first take a look at the build-up. After You Can't Stop Me, fans wanted a Suicide Silence album that was vicious and authentic, and it seemed like that would be what they were getting when the band started promoting the album in late 2016. In September of that year, speaking to Wall of Sound, Mark Haleman said, "It's not going to be full of computer trickery. It's not going to sound like all the Pro Tools ninjas and Logic ninjas. We got real microphones on real drums and real amps with real performances, real takes, real f***ing everything. The record's going to be natural and raw and pissed. It's gonna be exactly what music needs, which is some fucking heart, some blood, some real give a shit passion put down onto moments in time. We recorded with tape on this record. There's real music. It's not samples. We just want for a record that speaks for us and really exemplifies where we're at as a band. It's gonna be something else for people to witness, like a car accident they can't keep their eyes off of. This is the first record that we've fully just put blinders on, and we're not looking at anything going on outside of us, just what's in front of us. And what's in front of us is our band. There's no outside influence other than Suicide Silence doing what Suicide Silence wants to do. We're far along in the process. The record won't be out until next year, but we're deep in it. So right from the start, the band set a high bar for themselves. You can imagine why a fan reading this at the time would be able to barely contain their excitement. In November, vocalist Eddie Ormita added that this album was supposed to be a statement. We're extremely excited. The band is taking a freight train that has been moving at 200 miles an hour and turning the wheel completely left, and we're hoping to see the aftermath. The jacket is on. It's on. I can't wait to bring this out. This is a real statement of who I am, who the band is, and where we come from. There's also a comfort in obscurity that we didn't have before. It's one of those deals where it's like everything that could potentially go wrong is what I want. And I can't wait for all the beautiful comments that are going to be coming, all the beautiful words that people have to say. People would have words all right. They sure did. For now, the real concerning signs started to emerge the following month when the band stated that the album would contain 70% pure vocals and would exist outside the spectrum of the Suicide Silence sound. We decided as a band to do something way outside the spectrum of what Suicide Silence has done in the past. We wanted to maintain a heavy sound while exploring our love of music, and what came out surprised us 100%. Really, the biggest difference is that we stopped giving a and when you do that, you feel free and you learn who you really are. There's clean vocals on 70% of the album. It's the first time Eddie has been confident enough to do it. There's a lot of singing in it. There's a lot of screaming in it. For any deathcore or Suicide Silence fan who saw those quotes at the time, this was a huge red flag. Whilst it's not uncommon for bands to experiment with their sound ever so often, clean vocals on 70% of the album and the final product being 100%, surprising might as well be music made by a completely different band, especially as metal fans aren't a particularly open-minded crowd when it comes to their precious subgenres. Nevertheless, music still had to come out to make any definitive judgments. And so in January 2017, we got the first taste of the self-titled album with the single Doris, accompanied by a 360 music video. Yeah, Doris is a heavy song. There's two notes that make you forget about everything else in the song, but the song is heavy. It's got one of the heaviest breakdowns we've ever done. It was all recorded live. There's no tricks, no sound replacement to create a vibe. It's all real. A real sound coming out of a real band, which is weird for a lot of people. Everybody hated it. The song as a whole didn't sound properly mixed, but the clean vocals would become the main focus of criticism from fans. It became a meme, thanks largely to the reaction video from Jared Dines.
Wait. What was that? What was that? That's like when you try to like fart really quietly.
Nobody took the song seriously. After giving the record such a big build-up, to have that be the first taste of this bold new direction was a huge letdown, and a huge blow for this new album rollout. Almost all of the comments on the music video were negative. This sounds like a bunch of 14-year-olds who listen to Korn and Deftones, and they started a garage band. Be right back. I'm going to listen to Carnifex. I should be honest, I won't be right back. I'm going to Carnifex and never looking back. If I listened to this without ever knowing it was by Suicide Silence, I would have thought it was a totally different band that tried to copy Korn and failed. 360 video, so you can spin as fast as Mitch Lucker in his coffin, LMFAO. All that negative press ensured that the band's next single, Silence, released in February, just a couple of weeks before the album officially dropped, would also be received poorly. It was not helped by the fact that Eddie, in the build-up to the release, called Doris a social experiment.
It's really cool to just see this social experiment happen right now. It's blowing my mind to see how ingrained people have their sensibility of how we should sound, their idea of who we should be, and how little they really think that we should express ourselves. It's really funny to see that, but it's also, I mean, when you think about it, it's only like a small percentage of people that are talking about it compared to the people that are watching it and not saying anything. Those are the people that I'm curious about. I'm like, I want to have conversations with people to see what they actually think.
Just like with Doris, the Silence single was robustly rejected by the fans. In fact, immediately after it came out, one fan started a petition on change.org to stop Nuclear Blast from releasing the album, and it got over 5,000 signatures. One fan who reportedly signed the petition said, "I love Suicide Silence, but so far what we've heard isn't Suicide Silence. It's crap. I'm signing because we all know you're more than capable of doing great things, but this is so far from that. Please let this be a joke and release something real, something with effort, something we all know you're more than capable of." Well, they didn't manage to stop the rollout, and the album released as scheduled late February 2017, and as expected, it was panned. The self-titled contained fewer but lengthier tracks than before, including 2 ballads, or the closest thing to ballads, from a heavy metal outfit. It was obvious the band wanted to expose a more vulnerable side, and whilst none of the songs were irredeemably bad, the bad production quality, inconsistent, pure vocals, and incomplete ideas meant this was not an album the community liked at all. The album reception wasn't helped by Eddie Armida taking subtle little digs at bands like Cannibal Corpse for staying in their lane. Nothing sells as much as our first record. That's what it ends up becoming. That's what bands like the Black Dahlia Murder and Cannibal Corpse do. You know, they've found their niche, and they sit in it, and they love it. They sustain and go out on tour, and that's a cool life. I think it's safe and kind of a sellout in a way. It doesn't push boundaries and caters to a niche of people, as opposed to trying to create music that helps the world, changes the world. You can tell how much this album meant to Eddie by how scattergun and reactive he was in the promotional run for this album. After the bad reaction to Doris, he had this very odd and copy response. You look at it, and it's like someone making fun of your bright pink hair. Like, I don't have bright pink hair, but you can go ahead and think that I do, and have a good time calling me gay. I don't really care. It's not real, so it doesn't really affect me. Like people saying I'm out of key when I can literally play a piano to the notes I'm singing. It's not real. I don't take true offense to it. Fact is, it's real to them, and I get a lot of joy from it. I wrote a song, and it creates a different reality for people. It brings their real feelings to the surface, and they start speaking about it on the internet, which, in a way, feels like a weird social experiment that's going way better than I would have ever thought. I'm getting a cultured response by the scene, and the scene is the only people who are online. The sceney kids who don't buy music or go to shows, just sit at home and blabber off, kind of try to dictate how bands do by their opinions. It's not real. I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to stop the quote there. The fan disappointment with this album was understandable and is perhaps made more confusing when they realized that the legendary Ross Robinson worked on it, and the band had this whole thing planned as far back as 2009.
We were following, and this is something I just recently started kind of discussing because it didn't really make sense to talk about back then. We were following the Pantera and Metallica album footprint, you know, and mainly Metallica. And Metallica's 5th album was the Black Album, and they made a big departure and change, and they rolled the dice and did something way different. And we said around 2009, when we were writing No Time to Bleed or finishing it, we said, you know, if we make it to the 5th album, if we make it to our Black Album, we're going to do a self-titled, and we're going to do something way different. We didn't know what that was. We didn't know what that meant. But it was kind of this planned thing that we knew we were going to do. And even more story to that, we wanted Ross Robinson to produce our first record, and he was not in our budget and he wasn't going to do that record, so it didn't happen. But by the time we got to the 5th album, Ross was available. Ross was into it. Ross became a friend of ours, and if anybody knows Ross Robinson is he loves to make a Ross Robinson album, and we were in this perfect place. 5th album, let's do something super unsafe and risky and out there. And it was almost that what happened there is like we knew we wanted to do something super wild, and we just went for it and we did it.
Eddie speaking about what the fans wanted to say here. fans don't really like the technical aspect. They love the breakdowns. So either they become more breakdowny and continue doing whatever they do, or they branch out. We started seeing that trend, and really, Suicide Silence wanted to make a change before I even joined the band. When I recorded You Can't Stop Me, that was the time for that record. When it was time to start writing this record, it was time. We all looked at each other and said, this is the perfect opportunity to branch out and do something different. We looked at each other and all jumped off a cliff. A bold strategy, considering how most of their biggest songs were focused on breakdowns, or at least was breakdown heavy. Regardless, the band sort of moved on quickly from the disaster of the self-titled release. Their next album, Become the Hunter, was a semi-reluctant return to form. You could tell when the self-titled came out that they really wanted to evolve deathcore into something else. If bands keep doing what we're doing, it can still remain as a powerhouse. Fact is, the reason people don't believe in deathcore is it sounds dumbed down and cheesy and not challenging the play. A lot of the death metal elitists make fun of it, and anyone who doesn't listen to all screamed vocals isn't going to listen to it. So you're kind of stuck playing to these fans who are either deathcore fans or death metal elitists, or just metal elitists in general. The patch-wearing fucking weirdos. You start playing to these crowds, and they're never going to accept the virtuosity of dumbing down your music. They're never going to understand it. If it's not played at 230 BPM, people are going to think it's whack. That right there goes to show how simple-minded and afraid of change people in our scene are. If bands start challenging themselves and pushing what they can do as musicians and goes out there and writes some really good tunes, I think deathcore has a future. Bands succumb to what Thy Art Is Murder just did, like, oh yeah, we're gonna save deathcore, and they write the same song they wrote on their last record, it's going to die. That's just it. Bands start to grow, deathcore will grow. Bands make the music they've always made, it's going to die. As oddly bitter and egotistical as that sounds, there is a little bit of a point to it. Bands should of course be allowed to grow and explore different sounds. Mitch Lucker himself wasn't a fan of being put in the deathcore box.
Deathcore is so narrow. It's just like death metal and core, like whatever, or hardcore. It's like, okay.
Honestly, heavy metal's been around since as long as, like, think of old Black Sabbath. That's heavy metal, bottom line. And it's always gonna be around because it's metal and it's heavy, and there's always been heavy metal bands. I like the term heavy metal because it's metal. Metal's the big, broad spectrum of music, and it's heavy. Play heavy riffs that you can groove to, and it's just heavy metal. It's so simple. Why can't heavy metal? What did that word like? Not is it not cool anymore? Is it taboo? Because like, oh yeah, it doesn't have death in it. Death metal, deathcore. Like, shut the up. Like, it's heavy metal.
At the end of the day, most bands wouldn't survive the amount of obstacles that Suicide Silence has had to overcome. And it's truly a blessing that they're still around, putting out music even though they need a break every now and then. Chris Garza took time off touring in 2025. Explaining his absence from live shows in December, he said, "What's up, everyone? As some of you have noticed, I've missed the last couple Suicide Silence shows. It's because I'm on a hiatus from the band. Susie has been on my brain every day since 2002 with no break. Everything is fine. I just need to press the reset button so I can make the right decisions in the near future. As the Terminator said, I'll be back." And speaking earlier in 2025, Garza talks about how he continues to get inspired to make music by the new bands on the scene. "I'm just going to all these shows. I'm seeing deathcore bands, new metalcore bands. I didn't know who Alpha Wolf was until they played a small venue down the street. I was like, okay, I'll check it out." When you're consistently putting new shit into your mind, could be music, could be books, learning, something happens to your brain where it forces you to be open-minded, and that causes a new form of being creative. So now we started writing our new record 2 weeks ago, and I don't know, man, I'm playing different. It's weird. I don't know. I'm just like, oh, I wouldn't normally do that. So it's like the self-titled backlash, being broke for a long time, plus also being inspired, plus the new bands really pushing me without them knowing. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. Something is happening. And maybe that is the secret to Suicide Silence's longevity. The fact that something at every moment has always been happening, good or bad. There's no denying that Mitch Lucker's death changed the course of the band forever. Suicide Silence was Mitch, and Mitch was Suicide Silence. Perhaps that's the reason why a self-titled album without Mitch was always doomed from the start. Nevertheless, the band's legacy and influence on the metal scene cannot be doubted or denied. All right, y'all, this is gonna be a good one. Over 50 years ago, two musicians, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, formed one of the biggest and most commercially successful bands in rock and roll history, known as Kiss. With time, other rock stars joined the group, including Ace Frehley and Peter Criss. At the peak of their career, they were the most popular band in America and were selling out stadiums globally. And although the band was made up of 4 guys, it was primarily controlled and owned by Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. And let's just say, they did not have the best personalities, and all they cared about was money. Simmons was infamous for saying the wildest things. On one occasion, he said people who are depressed should unalive themselves, and those who want to jump off a building should go ahead and jump instead of announcing it. Don't even get me started on how he called Prince's death pathetic. And Stanley wasn't any better. As one of the founding members of KISS, he teamed up with Simmons to replace a band member, Eric Carr, who was battling cancer. They ambushed Carr while he was in the hospital and told him he had to quit so the show could go on. While I was digging down this rabbit hole, one thing stood out. You see, most bands have extremely tight bonds, more like brothers. If you've noticed throughout some of the videos that we've done on the channel, some of them are just really tight-knit, some are not. They drink together, smoke together, and tour the globe with this rare synergy that endears them to fans. But with KISS, the story was entirely different. Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley mostly hated each other, but they could still come together in mutual hatred for, well, everyone else. I'll get into the friction within the band shortly. But first, let me give you a little backstory. KISS was formed by 2 guys from New York in 1973, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. They later brought in Peter Criss as the drummer and Ace Frehley as the lead guitarist. The makeup and characters came together shortly after. Each member built a persona out of their own personality. Stanley became the star child. Simmons was the demon. Criss, Catman, and Frehley was the spaceman. But in 1980, they had their first fracture. Peter Criss walked away due to multiple reasons, one of which was substance abuse. Eric Carr was brought in as the new drummer, and his character was the Fox. It did not take long for him to secure his position and become a fan's favorite, according to an article on Kiwi Fandom. The quote here, Carr earned a reputation amongst fans for being unusually friendly and approachable. He answered more mail than other band members and often added messages to his autographs. Despite being a replacement member, his popularity soared amongst fans based on this decency and his well-honed percussion skills. From 1980 to 1991, Eric Carr played on 6 studio albums as the official full-time drummer for KISS. Then, in a sad turn of events in February 1991, he became sick. What looked at first like an ordinary health scare turned out to be an extremely rare form of heart cancer. It was at this time that the co-founders of KISS, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, did something really terrible. They replaced him without any consideration or empathy. In an interview in 2002, Gene Simmons revealed that this is still a very emotional subject. At first, when Eric was coughing up blood, he was referred to the KISS medics, and at first, it did not seem to be serious. It wasn't until Eric had open heart surgery that the tumors were found. Myself and Paul were the only people with Eric at the time, and we allowed Eric all the time in the world to recover and rejoin the band. Unfortunately, the cancer spread, and we then knew he only had a matter of months to live. We sat down with Eric and told him that the band still had to move forward, which is when we then recruited Eric Singer and told Eric Carr he had been replaced. Eric was definitely upset with the decision. So while Eric was in the hospital receiving chemotherapy, they tried to pressure him to resign from the band, and then they replaced him. Think about that. Their drummer for 11 years was battling for his life, and all they cared about was the business. In an interview on Play That Rock and Roll channel, Eric's then-girlfriend, Carrie Stevens, talked about what it was like. They pressured him incredibly while he was in the hospital having chemo, and this is why you can imagine I was angry for a very long time. Carrie also said that they know it's wrong now, but I knew it was wrong then as a young girl. I know my values were different, and I didn't have a stake in KISS business or for money or anything. So like I said, they were coming from a completely different place than I was. But when somebody is fighting for their life. I can't imagine what it's like to be, in the hospital with a terminal diagnosis fighting for your life and your complete identity is being taken away from you.
Opinion later about how they treated Eric in the end.
Right.
He had a great relationship with them for, 11 years or something. And then his last year with the band was rough, and then he got sick.
Yep.
And he didn't handle it well. And of course, I wasn't happy with them for the way that they treated him. I don't want to speak for them, but I think they realized they could have done things better and differently. And it was a tough time. Everybody was under pressure. Nobody knew exactly what was going to happen. They were coming from a business perspective. I was coming from, the perspective of somebody that was his girlfriend and that was at every doctor's appointment. I was in the hospital bed with him. I was seeing the pain. I was feeling the pain as if I were the patient. So, and they weren't there at all. So, so my relationship was emotional. I wish theirs had been a little bit more emotional for them and they had more compassion. It seems like they were more about business, and they're notorious for being about business.
Reacting to this, one user said in the comments, "Let's talk about a contrast. When Rick Allen of Def Leppard lost his arm, they stopped everything and allowed him time to heal and figure out how to play drums with only one arm. So they waited 4 years for him to get better before they put out their next album. That is how Eric Carr's illness should have been handled, but we're talking about Stanley and Simmons here. It was all about the dollar signs." Eric eventually died in November of that same year, and it was only years later that Paul Stanley talked about his regrets on how Kiss handled the situation in his book, Face the Music. He noted that once we told him we were going to record Revenge, he cut himself off from us. Though I thought I had made the best choices at the time, I began to realize I'd been wrong. We had cut Eric off in perhaps the worst way by denying him what mattered most to him, his place in Kiss. How Eric Carr was treated wasn't a one-off event. It was a prelude to how Kiss would go on to treat other band members. His experience set the tone for a pattern that would repeat itself in the years that followed. In 1996, Ace Frehley and Peter Criss came back to Kiss. Frehley left the band 2 years after Criss because of creative differences, frustration with the band's pop rock musical direction, and heavy substance abuse struggles. He got replaced by Vinnie Vincent. So, when the original 4 members came back together in 1996, fans were really excited. In 2002, they decided to do their farewell tour while they were all together. It was across the USA, Canada, Japan, and Australia. But halfway through the supposed final farewell tour, Peter Criss walked away again after things got heated over salary disputes. He reportedly trashed his own drum kit before leaving, and he was replaced mid-tour with Eric Singer. Singer continued as the Cat Man and kept the show rolling without missing a single date. And that right there tells you everything you need to know about how Kiss handled their business. The band never needed Criss. He was just used to drive ticket sales up. All it needed was someone willing to wear his face, because after Criss walked away for legitimate reasons, the show continued as if nothing happened. Just like they did with Eric Carr, Kiss were only concerned with the business and not the people. Frehley also left for good in 2002 after yet another fight over how much real creative and financial control he actually had. Speaking about the farewell tour experience in an interview with Blabbermouth, Frehley said, "It started off great. It was really strange because we wore our old costumes, and it wasn't that different from tours from the past. I remember a couple of times doing shows feeling like I'd really gone back in time. It was bizarre. But as the tour progressed, things got weird. People started saying the same old things, pushing people's buttons, and it wasn't fun anymore. It was like the early 80s all over again." When he was asked about what people were saying, his response was, "I don't want to get into specifics. People started doing a lot of the same things that they were doing around my first departure in 1982, making decisions without me. Originally, it was put together in the spirit of we were all going to kind of do this together, and the next thing I know, I'm feeling like a hired gun, and I don't have any say in anything, and that's not fun. The 4 of us invented Kiss and brought it to the world. It just wasn't fun anymore." Well, it turned out the farewell tour was not really farewell, because within a year after the tour ended, Stanley and Simmons decided to keep the band going. When asked why they continued, Stanley said they did the farewell to put Kiss out of its misery, and that was Kiss with the original 4 members. It meant that Stanley and Simmons never wanted the band to end. They only wanted Frehley and Criss to not be a part of it anymore. So the band continued, and in 2019, they announced another farewell tour, and this time some fans were not happy about it. Here's a post right here. "I love Kiss and have seen them 7 times over the years, but the answer is simple: money. I saw them twice in 2000 on their farewell tour. Paul Stanley said both times that this was it. After the tour, it was over, and they would never go back on their word because they didn't want to lie to the fans who have supported them since the beginning. A year after that tour ended, VH1 offered them a huge wad of cash to go on tour again. Gene Simmons, aside from being a complete asshole in real life, is a greedy, money-driven son of a bitch, and he'll admit it straight to your face. They were making tons of money on this farewell tour until the pandemic hit, and now everything is on hold. It must be driving Simmons out of his mind. Will this be the actual farewell tour? I almost think it will. Simmons and Stanley are getting on up there in years now, and Stanley has admitted the physical toll it is taking on him to stay on the road is getting to be a burden. He's had to cancel a few shows because his voice went out for a short time. But to reiterate, it's money. It's always been about the money. The relationship between Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, and the other two founders of KISS was tumultuous for the most part. In an interview with Bang Showbiz in 2012, Paul Stanley said Ace Frehley and Peter Criss became impossible and intolerable, and that he was never really friends with them. And these are people he was in a band with for years. But that's not all. In his book Face the Music, he accused them of anti-Semitic behavior, and Peter Carr responded by insisting that he was not anti-Semitic. Regardless of their unstable relationship, they were able to release one album after their reunion in 1996. The entire marketing was that the original four were back in the studio together, grinding it like old times. Well, that was not what really happened behind the scenes. According to interviews Frehley and Criss have given over the years, most of the guitar work actually came from Bruce Kulick and Tommy Thayer, while most of the drum tracks were handled by a hired musician named Kevin Valentine. Frehley and Criss were only involved in a handful of tracks in any meaningful way. Criss was vocal about how strange everything got. In his book, Make Up to Break Up, My Life in and Out of KISS, he described not being invited into the studio in any real sense, and then being told he could still go around telling people he played on the record, even though he hadn't touched it. He said outright he couldn't live with a deal like that.
I was really excited. I was like, wow, we're going to finally do a studio album together as a band. All of a sudden, they're like, you're going to do what we tell you to do. You know, we're going to put our songs on it. We'll pay you for the record, and we'll say you played on it, but we don't want you to tell the world you didn't play on it. I couldn't live with that.
Frehley told a nearly identical version, saying his involvement was extremely limited and that he wasn't even asked to play on most of the songs.
Psycho Circus, I had very limited involvement. You know, I wasn't invited to the studio. You know, when you hear Paul and Gene talk about it, it's like I didn't show up or, you know. The reason I'm not on any of the songs is because I wasn't asked to be on them, you know, whereas they try to make it look like I was absent. You know, I just wasn't invited to any of the sessions.
Stanley and Simmons have offered different explanations at different points. They said that Frehley and Criss weren't hitting the standard their producer, Bruce Fairbairn, wanted. Meanwhile, Frehley and Criss have said flat out that they were paid specifically not to play. Now, hiring session musicians on a record isn't unusual by itself. That happens consistently across the industry. What made this one different was the marketing. Psycho Circus was sold as a genuine reunion record. The entire campaign leaned completely on the promise that the original guys were back in the room together. And the two guys running that marketing campaign knew the whole time that two of the four credited members barely showed up on the finished product. So, fans who bought that record in 1998 and expected Ace Frehley's guitar work actually heard either Tommy Thayer or Bruce Kulick playing in Frehley style instead of most of the track. The thing is, Simmons and Stanley weren't just rude to bandmates. They didn't care about anyone. Simmons specifically was notorious for saying things that got a lot of people upset. Back in 2014, Simmons had an interview with Song Facts, which got a lot of backlash from people purely because of how he talked about mental health struggles. While talking about depression, Gene said, "For a putz 20-year-old kid to say I'm depressed, I live in Seattle. F*** you. Then unalive yourself. I never understand because I always call them on their bluff. I'm the guy who says jump when there's a guy on top of a building who says, that's it, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to jump. Are you kidding? Why are you announcing it? Shut the fuck up, have some dignity and jump. You've got the crowd." He continued and said, "By the way, you walk up to the same guy on a ledge who threatens to jump and put a gun to his head, I'm going to blow your f***ing head off." He'll go, "Please don't, it's true." He's not that insane. These statements went viral and rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, so much so that Nikki Sixx, a bassist from another band, had to criticize him publicly. It's pretty moronic because Simmons thinks everybody listens to him, that he is the god of thunder. He will tell you he is the greatest man on earth, and to be honest with you, I like Gene, but in this situation, I don't like Gene. I don't like Gene's words. There is a 20-year-old kid out there who is a KISS fan and reads this and goes, you know what, he's right. I should just unalive myself. And Nikki added, For people who are depressed, there is a way out. There are many, many ways out, and I don't want people to listen to an interview from a rock star who's telling you the only way out is out. It took some time, but Simmons eventually apologized for his statement. I was wrong, and in the spur of the moment made remarks that, in hindsight, were made without regard for those who truly suffer the struggles of depression. I sincerely apologize to those who were offended by my comments. I recognize that depression is very serious and very sad when it happens to anyone, especially loved ones. I deeply support and am empathetic to anyone suffering from any disease, especially depression. Then, in an unexpected turn of events, in the same month he apologized, Simmons revealed in his book, 27, The Legend and Mythology of the 27 Club, that his son, Nick, suffered from depression, and that was what changed his mind about the mental illness. He wrote, "Sometimes it takes someone that you love to explain things to you before you can believe they are real." That was my first encounter with this strange thing, clinical depression, that I actually considered to be authentic. Once I realized my son was part of this thing, it made me regret things I had said publicly and its related issues. I have been harsh because I didn't believe that people could be sick in that way. I believed it was a matter of willpower, a matter of character flaws, and I suspect many in my generation will feel this way. But in truth, Simmons did not learn any real lesson because 2 years later in 2016, after legendary musician Prince died, he made the following comments. His drugs killed him. What do you think? He died from a cold? Simmons didn't stop there. He continued. I think Prince was heads, and feet above all the rest of them. I thought he left Michael Jackson in the dust. Prince was way beyond that. But how pathetic that he unalived himself. Don't kid yourself, that's what he did. Slowly, I'll grant you, but that's what drugs and alcohol are, a slow death. What was surprising at that point was that it wasn't just people and musicians from other bands who called him out. His own bandmates, Paul Stanley, also called him out on X. Embarrassed by the cold, clueless statements about Prince's death, without all the facts, it is better to say nothing. My apologies. Eventually, after taking heat from every corner, Simmons apologized. I just got such shit from my family for my big mouth again. I apologize. I have a long history of getting very angry at what drugs do to the families and friends of the addicts. He continued, needless to say, I didn't express myself properly here. But in typical Simmons fashion, he made another insensitive statement about former bandmates Ace Frehley and Peter Criss. In an interview he gave to Guitar World in 2019, he said, Ace and Peter have gotten 3 chances. They were in and out of the band, fired 3 times for drug, alcohol, bad behavior, being unprofessional. They weren't carrying their load. So the short answer to your question is we'd love to have Ace and Peter join us here and there, and if they don't, it's not going to be because of us, but they're never going to be in Kiss again. After word got out, Peter didn't respond, but Frehley didn't let it slide. In response, Frehley said that he was never fired 3 times, but that he quit twice. And the reason he gave was, you and Paul were control freaks, untrustworthy, and were too difficult to work with. But Frehley did not stop there. He also made serious allegations about yucky misconduct by Simmons towards his wife. According to him, the icing on the cake was when you groped my wife and propositioned her in Los Angeles at the Capitol Records building behind my back. I only found out about the proposition several weeks later. She was planning on pursuing a suit against you, but I told her to call it off. That was a serious allegation, but Frehley was not the first person to accuse Simmons of yucky misconduct. In December 2017, a radio and TV broadcaster listed in court documents as a Jane Doe sued Gene Simmons in Los Angeles Superior Court. According to the complaint covered by Rolling Stone, the alleged abuse happened during a November 2017 interview with Simmons and Paul Stanley at their own Rock and Brews restaurant located in Highland, California. The lawsuit claimed Simmons repeatedly grabbed the woman's hand and forced it onto his knee, that he flicked or struck her throat mid-conversation, and that afterward, while posing for a promotional photo together, he touched her behind. The complaint said he basically turned a professional interview into innuendo and left her deeply uncomfortable. Simmons publicly denied everything. For the record, I did not assault the person making these accusations in the manner alleged in the complaint or harm her in any way. I am conferring with my lawyers with the aim of vigorously countering these allegations, and I look forward to my day in court where the evidence will prove my innocence. But that day never came because Simmons settled the case out of court and the details of the settlement were not made public. It is interesting to note that a few weeks before Simmons was accused by the radio and TV broadcaster, he got banned from Fox News because of inappropriate and yucky behavior, and he had to issue a public apology. I have appeared frequently over the years on various Fox News and Fox Business programs and have a tremendous amount of respect for the talented women and men who work there. While I believe that what is being reported is highly exaggerated and misleading, I am sincerely sorry that I unintentionally offended members of the Fox team during my visit. The more I looked into Kiss, man, the more I saw how insensitive Simmons was, apparently. It sucks. As a rock star, he was never shy to talk about his dislike of hip-hop. In 2016, just before rap group NWA was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he said in an interview with Rolling Stone that he looked forward to the death of rap. He also said, "I'm looking forward to music coming back to lyrics and melody instead of just talking. A song, as far as I'm concerned, is by definition lyric and melody or just melody." NWA did not forget to address the statement when they were on stage for their Hall of Fame induction. MC Ren used part of his acceptance speech to address Simmons directly.
And I want to say to Mr. Gene Simmons, hip-hop is here forever.
Simmons did not let it go. In another interview, he said, "Ice Cube and I had a back and forth. He's a bright guy, and I respect what he's done. It's not my music, and I don't come from the ghetto. It doesn't speak my language. I said in print many times, hip-hop does not belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, nor does opera, symphony orchestras. It's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame." But I shot back and said, "No, it's the spirit of rock and roll." Okay, fine. I just want to know when Led Zeppelin's going to be in the Hip Hop Hall of Fame. Music has labels because it describes an approach. This one was just me, honestly speaking. Back when Simmons launched his own reality show, Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, which is, that's just a wild name, reporters compared it to The Osbournes, since that was the reality show that basically invented the genre of an unfiltered look into celebrity family daily life. But Simmons did not like the comparison. "My family is more structured and they behave properly. My kids don't take drugs. They're well-mannered and properly disciplined, and I don't go letting dogs poop on the carpet. I'm not a drug addict. In fact, I've never been drunk. I don't smoke. I have never taken drugs and never will." At the time, the Osbournes' kids, Kelly and Jack, were both publicly dealing with substance abuse issues, and that made Simmons' comments sound like a shot at two teenagers going through something genuinely hard in front of the entire world. That did not sit well with Sharon Osbourne, and when she gave her response, she did not hold back at all. She said, "He'll always be C-list, and his wife's snatch has been rubbed on every pole in LA. I'll f***ing tear his head off and stick it up his wife's gut." That is a wild comment. The two of them eventually hashed it out over the years on Sharon's talk show, The Talk. She invited Simmons, then brought up the issue. Many, many years ago, when you first started the reality TV show, Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, it was reported that somebody said, "Isn't it like the Osbournes?" And you said, "No, because my kids aren't on drugs." So I came back with a rebuttal. And then there was something printed in the Kiss magazine about how there should have been a disclaimer at the beginning of the Osbournes TV show that says, "People shouldn't drink, otherwise you'll end up like Ozzy Osbourne." And you said he was sad. And I don't think my husband is sad. So there we go. Simmons accepted responsibility, then apologized, effectively ending the feud between them. But Simmons wasn't done trolling people yet. The devil horns hand gesture is basically the universal symbol of rock and metal at this point. Ronnie James Dio, the legendary Black Sabbath and Rainbow vocalist, is the guy mostly credited with popularizing it.
I'm of Italian extraction, and my grandmother and my grandfather on both sides of both my mother's and father's side came to America from Italy, and they had superstitions. And I would always see my grandmother when I was a little kid, you know, with her holding my hand and walking down the street. She would see someone and go, "What's that?" And eventually learned that it was called the Maloik. And the Maloik was, someone was giving us the evil eye, so she's giving it protection against the evil eye. Or you can give someone the evil eye too. So invent it, no, but perfect it and make it important, yes, because I did it so much, especially within the confines of that great band, Sabbath.
Ronnie Dio never actually claimed to have invented the gesture itself, just that he was the one who made it a rock and roll staple. But Gene Simmons has told a different story for years, insisting he was the one who actually brought the gesture into rock and roll in the first place. The two men never really resolved this in public, and it turned into a long-running rivalry over who used it first.
Although Gene Simmons will tell you that he invented it, but then again, Gene invented breathing and shoes and everything, you know.
The rivalry stayed at that level for years until Simmons decided to take it up a notch. In June 2017, 7 years after Ronnie Dio passed away, Simmons filed an application with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to trademark the gesture for commercial entertainment use, meaning, in theory, that he would have legal standing over who got to use it in a professional context. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Ronnie Dio's widow, Wendy Dio, in an interview with The Wrap, called out Simmons. To try to make money off of something like this is disgusting. It belongs to everyone. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's a public domain. It shouldn't be trademarked. Reacting to this, one user commented, "I'm a Kiss fan and huge Dio fan, but Gene is so delusional with this trademark. Regardless of who did what first, trying to trademark a hand gesture is a complete joke." For reasons that were not made public, Simmons quietly withdrew the application less than 2 weeks after filing it. When he was asked in an interview by the Windsor Star if he had any regrets about attempting the trademark, he said, "I regret nothing. Wake up every morning and let your conscience be your guide. Did you know I own the money bag logo? The $sign with the bag of money. I own all kinds of things. I own motion pictures as a trademark. Anyone who thinks that's silly, the silliest thing I've ever done is wear more makeup and higher heels than your mommy. People said, you can't do that. Actually, bitch, I can. I can do anything I want to do." There are other outrageous things Simmons has said and done over the years, and if I attempt to cover all of them, this entire video will just be about him, and it will be too long. Anyway, for Kiss as a band, I think it all came down to one thing. They always placed business above everything else. Like Gene Simmons once said, he does everything for the money.
I would say there are some who think I'm an asshole. There are other people who think you only do this for money, and my response is, of course.
So it's no surprise that as a band, they used and discarded people whenever there was profit on the table. And at the end of the day, one thing is clear. A great band can still be full of people with horrible personalities. All right, this one's gonna be good. Imagine destroying your own career on purpose. Getting banned, hated, sued, being the most hated group in America, robbed of millions of dollars, only to come back and become one of the greatest music groups ever that inspired Eminem, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, and countless other artists. That's exactly what happened to the Beastie Boys. Yet despite everything that happened, these three scrawny kids with questionable lyrics ended up changing music forever. The Beastie Boys are a group that shouldn't exist, shouldn't even be in conversations when it comes to music geniuses, but somehow they not only exist, but are regarded as one of the greatest of all time in the music industry. The Beastie Boys are an American hip-hop group formed in New York City in 1981 and consisted of Adam Horovitz, famously known as Ad Rock, Adam Yauch, aka MCA, and Michael Diamond, who is famously known as Mike D. The Beastie Boys are almost impossible to define. Mention Eminem and you think rap. Mention Queen and you think rock. Mention the Beastie Boys and the answer depends on which decade you're talking about. They constantly reinvented themselves, and that story begins with two terrible punk bands in New York. The Beastie Boys originally started as two different hardcore punk bands, with Mike D in one band and Adam Horovitz in the other. Mike D's band was called the Young Aborigines, with Mike D on drums, Jeremy Shayton on bass guitar, and John Barry on guitar, with Kate Schellenbach later joining the band, playing drums for them.
It was just a terrible, terrible combination of, because none of us knew how to play, but I mean, we had a lot of enthusiasm. Let's say we were, for lack of a better word, a jam band. It's a terrible term, but it's just a band whacking off, basically.
The band supported other punk rock bands, such as Bad Brains, The Dead Kennedys, The Misfits, and Reagan Youth at places like Max's Kansas City and CBGB. Unfortunately, the band's original members will start to leave one by one to pursue other aspects of their lives. In 1981, guitarist Jeremy Shayton left the band in New York City. During his absence, his bandmates, Michael Diamond, Kate Schellenbach, and John Barry decided to try a new thing, which was experimental hardcore punk. But when he came back, he saw that Adam Yauch, aka MCA, as told before, had replaced him. But the ultimate factor for him quitting was the band's new direction of music, which was experimental hardcore punk, and Jeremy wasn't interested in playing such music, so he left. It was during this time that the four of them, being Mike Diamond, John Barry, Kate Schellenbach, and Adam Yauch, began to perform officially as the Beastie Boys. The name at first was an acronym, which meant boys entering anarchistic states towards inner excellence, which made no sense with the second boys added at the end and the fact that they actually had a female drummer. So they canceled the acronym and just stuck with the name as it is. Their early songs lasted barely a minute. They screamed more than they sang. Their first EP, Pollywog Stew, sounded exactly like the underground hardcore records of the era, with all 8 tracks on the EP lasting 10 minutes and 43 seconds. Specifically speaking, the track Riot Fight was just 30 seconds, but their famous song from the EP was Egg Raid on Mojo.
Were about stuff that really happened, most of it, like Egg Raid on Mojo. I mean, that was a real incident. There was this guy named Mojo, and he was a bouncer at a club, and we hated him because he would never let us into the damn club. So we decided that there was going to be an egg raid on Mojo, that we were going to literally, do the old Halloween trick and take a dozen eggs and throw them at him.
Unfortunately for the Beastie Boys, John Barry decided to quit the band at the height of their underground success with their EP.
And I remember getting a quick look at them, and then it seemed like, next thing I knew, John Barry was out, and Adam Horowitz was in. And I remember asking Mike why, and I guess mostly it had to do with John showing up late, not being on time for things.
I was a bad, bad boy and drank too much alcohol. I was doing a little experimenting. I'll leave it at that. Kids out there, stay away from the booze. Bad stuff for you. Terrible.
So yeah, John quit the Beastie Boys in 1982 because he was losing interest, having serious drug and alcohol problems, and not being able to handle how professional the band was becoming. Adam Horowitz was the one that replaced him. Gradually, the Beastie Boys were becoming well known in New York's hardcore scene, even managing to get gigs at CBGB's, which is known as the legendary birthplace of punk rock. While still gaining momentum as a punk rock band, they decided to do something stupid.
They decided to record this thing called Cookie Puss, and Adam Horowitz basically called Carvel ice cream. They have a cake called the Cookie Puss. It's an ice cream cake for birthdays, And he called the store. Probably made someone's life miserable, and they put it all on tape. And it was brilliant. It was hilarious.
By all logic, the track Cookie Puss should have been forgotten within weeks of its release. However, DJs started playing it in clubs. It received extensive airplay on local college radio stations.
And Michael Diamond, affectionately known as Mike D. The band's story started a long time ago, way back in the late 1970s. America at the time was facing the start of the Ronald Reagan era and a new breed of disillusion.
The song became part of their new lineup's first EP, also called Cookie Puss, which was the first work to show their incorporation of the underground rap phenomenon and their use of samples. Its immense success was undeniable. Their records were sold out just by word of mouth alone. The song was so successful that they had enough money to quit their day jobs and rent their very first recording studio in Chinatown. Now, while some bands would still, stick to their roots, which for the Beastie Boys was punk rock, the Beastie Boys decided to abandon their roots totally and jump into rap music, a genre of music that was very much in its infancy. As punk thrived in downtown clubs, an alternative music movement was emerging in parks, leisure centers, and block parties in the Bronx. DJs such as Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, and Grandmaster Flash were pioneering an entirely new approach to making music. They used turntables instead of guitars. Instead of traditional singing, they rapped. It was entirely different, and while some people didn't warm up to this new kind of music, the Beastie Boys jumped in without a care. Following the success of Cookie Puss, the band began to mix rap into their sets. They hired a DJ for their live shows, who was the legendary producer Rick Rubin. At the time, he was a New York University student studying film.
He was working out of his dorm room in NYU. Adam took me over there, and I met him, and I thought, this is a guy who's, very serious about taking these guys further.
Rubin formed Def Jam Recordings with Russell Simmons and approached the band about producing them for his new label, but with a clause: get rid of Kate Schellenbach. As the band was transitioning to hip-hop, the Beastie Boys were seen as these rowdy, obnoxious, misogynistic boys. Kind of like how people see frat boys, and Rick Rubin noticed that persona was getting them fans, sold out tickets, and fame, so he doubled down on it. But it wouldn't work well if a girl were part of the group. Kate was fired in 1984, with Mike Diamond taking over on drums. This decision to fire Kate and team up with Rick Rubin would be one they would end up regretting later in life. With Kate gone, the Beastie Boys were now three: Mike Diamond, Adam Yauch, and Adam Horovitz, and were now fully a hip-hop trio. The first song released by the Beastie Boys under Rick Rubin's Def Jam Recordings was Rock Hard in 1984. The song served as an important milestone in their existence, blending their unique rap style with heavy rock instrumentation. Rock Hard was a massive underground success that gave the band their first taste of national attention, and it should have gone on to be one of the best songs of that decade, if not for one little thing: the AC/DC sample. They heavily sampled the distant guitar riff from AC/DC's 1980 rock anthem Back in Black without permission. Because of this, AC/DC refused to clear the sample for future commercial releases, and the song became a commercial failure. Unfortunately, Rock Hard had to be completely removed from the Beastie Boys' multi-platinum 1999 compilation album The Sounds of Science. But even with the setback, Rock Hard was successful, and the Beastie Boys were no longer just a couple of boys only music aficionados knew about. The whole nation now knew about them.
Rap did give the Beastie Boys a considerable amount of credibility, because I think in the black community, they felt like, okay, the Beastie Boys are popular, but they're probably just popular because white people are writing about them and white people like them. Whereas Yo MTV Raps was one of the first time it was like black people saying to black people, it's like, these guys, they might be white and they seem like, buffoons or whatever, but they're actually, this is actually the kind of music you like too.
And when the Beasties first came on, they were not greeted with widespread approval, but usually by the end of their set, they would have won the audience over, and they did that pretty quickly.
We did a show in Virginia.
The Beastie Boys were so famous that they were opening shows for big artists such as Madonna, Public Image Ltd, and Murphy's Law with DJ Hurricane. The group was even on the Raising Hell tour with Run DMC, Houdini, LL Cool J, and the Timex Social Club. These were big names of their time, and these three young boys from New York City were doing tours with them. However, it was during this tour that a massive problem occurred that would change the Beastie Boys' lives forever. Remember when I said they were the opening act for Madonna? Well, here's the thing about Madonna concerts. They are kid-friendly, and the Beastie Boys were the opposite of that.
Major problem was they didn't realize, none of us realized, that half their fans were 11-year-old and 12-year-old kids, 14-year-old kids. And at that time, 14-year-old kids were not as sophisticated as they are now. They had a gigantic inflatable penis on their tour. They had the beer show where they poured beer all over everybody. They did all kinds of crap. And this is just a stripper in a cage, and this is just, on stage.
The attention they got.
I mean, if it were a Sex Pistols concert, the blame would fall entirely on the parents for bringing their kids to that sort of place, but the parents came to see Madonna with their kids, and all of a sudden, their 12-year-old kids are exposed to heavy phallic imagery on stage and learning new curse words. The Beastie Boys' vulgar, provocative behavior made them notorious.
American band calling itself the nastiest group in the world arrived in London. They'd flown in from Europe, where apparently they daubed the walls of their hotel with human excrement, wrecked one bar, and in another ended up throwing beer at other customers.
I remember first going...
But it was their trip to Europe that sparked the most outrage. The British newspapers cooked up a story and claimed that the Beastie Boys were laughing at handicapped and dying children, which made everyone heavily protest against them, attacking them as if they wanted to harm the boys.
Getting to Liverpool and doing a concert, as soon as I got on the turntables, start scratching, people start throwing beer cans at me, talking about fully loaded beer cans, and I'm like ducking, one of them coming towards my face, and I ducked. I was like, yo, y'all gotta stop throwing this stuff, right? So I'm thinking, all right, let me hurry and bring the guys out here, maybe they'll calm down. As soon as they came out, it got worse. It was like, OK Corral, it was like we was running from bullets. It was like throwing all kind of stuff at us. Then I remember, I believe it was MCA picked up something and threw it back in the crowd, and it hit somebody. And the next thing you know, the police was at the hotel looking to arrest somebody.
Luckily, the controversy from the Madonna concert to the national hate from news media, both home and abroad, didn't destroy their career. If anything, I think it made them more famous. I mean, imagine watching the news about them and the crazy things they did. Most people would be curious to know more about these troublemakers, only for their curiosity to turn them into die-hard fans. So, in a weird turn of events, the controversies gave them huge publicity and new fans. With their newfound publicity, the Beastie Boys released their first album, Licensed to Ill, on November 15th, 1986.
We got an album coming out called Licensed to Ill in August.
In the end of August.
End of August. This is my bet.
Packed full of hits.
That's Leroy.
Tell us a little more about the album.
Oh, the Beastie Boys album is going to be deaf. Ain't it going to be deaf?
It has about, what, 10 new songs?
It's got even more than that. 12 new songs.
12 new songs.
Licensed to Ill became one of the top-selling rap albums of the 1980s and was the first rap album to go #1 on the Billboard 200 chart, maintaining that rank for 5 weeks, and was Def Jam's fastest-selling debut album to date, with sales surpassing 9 million copies. The 7th song on the album, You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party, reached #7 on the US Billboard Hot 100. The music video became an MTV staple. Another track from the album, No Sleep Till Brooklyn, reached #14 on the UK singles chart. But that wasn't all that happened with the album. Specifically speaking, the music video to the song You Gotta Fight for Your Right Party sparked another controversy and increased the crime rate in the US and UK.
Boys is being blamed for a curious crime currently sweeping the southeast.
Last month, sales of VW emblems rocketed by 130%. 6,500 of these were sold, mostly to young people who wanted to stick them around their necks.
We started. Because Mike D wore a Volkswagen medallion on a thick gold chain in the video, fans across the US and UK started stealing the logos right off the grills of Volkswagens to emulate it. Unfortunately, that wasn't the only problem they had. Just as they were becoming one of the biggest groups in America, another problem emerged behind the scenes: money. The Beastie Boys discovered that despite their enormous success, they weren't receiving the royalties they believed they had earned from Rick Rubin. Remember when I said they would regret kicking out Kate and teaming up with Rick Rubin? Well, that time of regret came, and it came hard. Their relationship with Def Jam and Rick Rubin deteriorated quickly, and creative disagreements grew into financial disputes. Licensed to Ill was a monumental financial success, earning millions of dollars. The band's lawyers argue that their contract states they were entitled to around $2.5 million in royalties, but in reality, Def Jam and its co-founder, Russell Simmons, paid the trio less than $100,000, then canceled all remaining payments. Plus, it wasn't just money alone. Rick Rubin was making creative decisions without their approval. While the band was busy touring, Rick Rubin mixed and completed the tracks for the album without their input. The trio felt Rubin was overstepping his role and taking too much credit for their identity. Rick and Def Jam wanted the band to permanently maintain their obnoxious, beer-swilling, frat boy personas just as he originally planned. But the Beastie Boys were already growing out of this juvenile imagery and didn't like being boxed into a marketing gimmick. Eventually, they left the label entirely and officially jumped ship to sign with Capitol Records in 1988.
Rick Rubin came about basically because they learned the harsh lesson that many performers learn, which when you get successful, you are all of a sudden you want to have, let's say, you realize how little of yourself and your own success you're entitled to.
The very first song the Beastie Boys officially released under Capitol Records was Hey Ladies. It was released on July 3rd, 1989, and served as the lead single for their legendary sophomore album, Paul's Boutique. The track was accompanied by a wildly colorful, comedic music video that parodied 1970s disco culture and Saturday Night Fever. Hey Ladies was very different from the usual way they sounded. The result? It became a significant hit, peaking at number 36 on the Billboard Hot 100 and reaching number 10 on the Billboard Modern Rock Tracks chart. Once again, the Beastie Boys had reinvented themselves into a new persona. And then the album, Paul's Boutique, was released on July 25th, 1989. The album should have surpassed Licensed to Ill in all aspects, but it failed to do that, peaking at number 14 on the US album charts.
Respecting Licensed to Ill, so they didn't really respect Paul's Boutique.
And the reason for this failure was that most of their fan base didn't like this new version of the Beastie Boys. Their fan base, which consisted of bad boys and girls, couldn't even recognize this version of the Beastie Boys with this new album. I mean, these were the same guys who became famous for having go-go dancers and a 20-foot hydraulic male organ on stage. The same guys who created a whole song about reducing a woman's usefulness and purpose entirely to household servants and objects of male desire. The song, by the way, is titled Girls, and it's the most misogynistic song you will ever hear. So, coming from that background to this new form of Beastie Boys put off a lot of their fans, and then the decline set in.
Went from visiting big arenas to smaller ones. So it was definitely a gut check, I think. You know, either you down or you ain't down. Either you're gonna jump off the ship now or you're not.
I just get the impression that
a shift happened in 1992, 3 years after the release of Paul Boutique, and suddenly the album became recognized as a masterpiece, transforming from a commercial flop into one of the most celebrated albums in hip-hop history. The cultural shift began when the Beastie Boys released their third album, Check Your Head, in 1992. That album was a huge hit and showed that the band was no longer the obnoxious rap band they were, but were now serious, versatile musicians. This newly earned respect caused critics and fans to go back and reevaluate Paul's Boutique with fresh ears. Fortunately for the Beastie Boys, as alternative music and the golden age of hip-hop took off in the early 90s, the music community started to point back to Paul's Boutique as a blueprint for artistic freedom. Even icons like Public Enemy's Chuck D famously admitted that the black hip-hop community quietly recognized Paul's Boutique as having the best, most innovative beats around. In his words, the dirty secret among the black hip-hop community at the time of the release was that Paul's Boutique had the best beats. Jazz icon Miles Davis publicly noted that he never grew tired of listening to the record. Finally, sales numbers caught up with how people's views were changing. Paul's Boutique went platinum in 1995, selling over 1 million copies, and then double platinum in 1999. Meanwhile, the Check Your Head album was the first record since their hardcore punk era in which they played all of their own instruments. The album established the Beastie Boys as a major musical power in the alternative music scene. After so many years, they went back to their roots of just making music they genuinely enjoyed.
We kind of picked up the instruments, we kind of did it again, like came back in a different style when we picked them up, just kind of trying something else out.
Check Your Head, well, I was...
Mike D played drums, Yauk was on bass, and Horvitz played guitar. In the US alone, the record went double platinum and reached number 10 on the Billboard 200. What you want? Peaked at number 93 on the Billboard Hot 100 and also did well on the rap and modern rock charts. Pass the Mic, the third song from the album, hit number 38 on the Hot Dance Music chart. The record also took a more artistic turn, with songs like Lighten Up and Something's Got to Give that were influenced by funk and jazz. But personally, the impressive thing about this album was that it completely wiped off the Beastie Boys images of the late 80s. Paul Boutique started the cleansing, while Check Your Head completed it.
People love to see instruments. Like when you came to the show and Check Your Head, I mean, it was never done before. Nowadays you see people like Limp Bizkit and other rock bands trying to do what we did back then, which was pick up instruments, scratching with the instruments, rapping with instruments, and putting it all together in one type of, on one plate.
I mean, people were revising.
Check Your Head wasn't just a rap album or a rock album or even a funk album. It was all of them at once, and it made sense. In 1994, they released another album, Ill Communication. The album put the Beastie Boys back at the top of the charts, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200 and peaking at number 2 on the R&B/hip-hop albums chart. For many fans, this is the album that best captures everything the Beastie Boys were capable of and solidifies their status as legends. It moved effortlessly between hardcore punk, jazz, funk, instrumental jams, and hip-hop without ever feeling confused. The single, Sabotage, became a hit on the modern rock charts, and the music video, directed by Spike Jonze, received extensive play on MTV. Ill Communication has sold over 3.5 million physical copies worldwide, making it one of the most commercially successful albums of the band's career.
Communication, because the tours that we did on Ill Communication, the way we used to rock the crowd when we did Sabotage and Sure Shot and those songs like that, I mean, the crowds used to go so crazy from the shows we used to do. I mean, I wish I had some of them on video. It was just phenomenal. That was a hot year.
However, something else was happening to the Beastie Boys. At this time, people were starting to notice the differences in the Beastie Boys. It wasn't musical, it was personal. During the Licensed to Ill era, the Beastie Boys had spent years pretending to be exaggerated versions of themselves. Now they stopped pretending. Interviews became calmer, and their humor became subtler. They no longer seemed interested in shocking people for attention. Instead of trying to be the loudest people in the room, they became genuinely curious artists. All the songs they wrote in their youth, specifically speaking, the album Licensed to Ill, sounded hurtful to them, and they apologized for saying those things. And such, they still do this to this day.
Hi, I'm Brian McFadden with an MTV News Brief. In a letter printed in the December 16th issue of Time Out New York, Beastie Boy Adam "Ad Rock" Horowitz apologized for his group's attitude toward homosexuals in its earlier years. He penned the note in response to the magazine's review of their anthology compilation, writing, quote, "I would like to take this opportunity to formally apologize to the entire gay and lesbian community for the ignorant things we said in our first record, Licensed to Ill. There are no excuses, but time has healed our stupidity," end quote. That's news for now. Stay tuned for more at 10 of the hour, every hour, right here on MTV.
They hardly perform any music from Licensed to Ill and Cookie Puss, and not because they want to avoid a lawsuit, but just because they genuinely hate that aspect of their lives and want nothing to do with it. They also apologized to Kate Schellenbach, their female band member, for kicking her out. In the Beastie Boys memoir, Adam "Ad Rock" Horowitz directly addressed the issue, saying, "We kicked Kate out of the band because she didn't fit into our new tough rapper guy identity. Maybe Kate would have eventually quit the band because we were starting to act like a bunch of fucking creeps. But it was just shitty the way it happened, and I am so sorry about it." Among the three members, Adam Yauch went through the most changes. In the late 1980s, he began studying Buddhism. He became deeply interested in Tibetan culture and the teachings of the Dalai Lama. Friends noticed the change. He became quieter and more reflective, more politically aware. During a hiking trip through Tibet, Adam was drawn to the plight of the people in Tibet. Their country and culture were being taken over by China. He didn't like what he saw and decided to do something about it.
The Chinese are in occupation in Tibet. They have been for, I don't know, you should check this before you quote me on it, but I think it's like 40 years. And it's just basically like cultural genocide. The Chinese are just destroying the Tibetan culture, and it's a really amazing culture. Like the more I've checked it out, just the more I've really gotten into it. I've been really amazed with it. I was over in Nepal. I've been to Kathmandu a couple times, and there are a lot of Tibetans that live in exile there because it's the only place where they can practice Buddhism, practice their religion. And so I just got into checking it out. I went to some.
This led to the first Tibetan Freedom Concert, which took place in June 1996 at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco and lasted for 2 days. It was the largest rock benefit show since 1985's Live Aid, with over 100,000 people attending the concert. While Adam Horowitz started a family with Kathleen Hanna, the lead singer of the legendary feminist punk band Bikini Kill, Hanna had a big influence on Horowitz's liberal views and strong support for women's rights. And Mike D married independent film and music video director Tamara Davis. They had 2 sons, Davis and Skylar, before they got divorced. While Adam Yauch was living in Manhattan in 1996, the Beastie Boys continued to work on a new album called Hello Nasty in New York City. They started making it at the G-Sun Studios in Los Angeles in 1995. Hello Nasty was released on July 14, 1998, and sold 681,000 copies in its first week in the US. The album topped charts across the world, proving the Beastie Boys had become an international phenomenon. Their exceptional musical success made them win 2 Grammy Awards in 1999, receiving the Grammy Award for Best Alternative Music Album for Hello Nasty, as well as the Grammy Award for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group for Intergalactic. This was the first time that a group had won awards in both rap and alternative categories. They also won the award for Best Hip Hop Video for their hit song Intergalactic at the MTV Video Music Awards. In 2002, Adam Yauch started building a new studio facility in downtown Manhattan, New York, called Oscilloscope Laboratories, and the band started to work on a new album there. 2 years later, on June 15, 2004, they released the album To the Five Boroughs. This was the first album the band produced themselves, and it reached #1 on the Billboard Albums chart, #2 in the UK and Australia, and #3 in Germany. The first single from the album, Check It Out, reached #1 in Canada, and on the US Modern Rock Tracks chart. Despite its success, the album faced backlash and controversies. Tracks like It Takes Time to Build openly slammed the Bush's administration. They protested the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, nuclear proliferation, and the national debt. But it came at a time when criticizing the government or the war on terror was seen by many as unpatriotic. The album alienated a segment of their mainstream fan base who preferred their music to remain a lighthearted party. Then the fans complained that the album featured zero live instrumentation, zero rock crossover energy, and absolutely no punk songs or elements. Since 1992, fans have loved that a Beastie Boys album could switch seamlessly between rap, funky jazz grooves, and raw hardcore punk tracks. But this album didn't have that at all. Many rock fans and alternative critics felt entirely left out. There was even a more disturbing allegation that the album installed spyware when inserted into the CD drive of a computer. The group denied this allegation, stating that what they called spyware is a copy protection software installed on European copies of the album. While there is no copy protection software on the album sold in the US and UK, there is one installed on European copies of the album. This is standard practice for all European releases on EMI/Capitol Records released in Europe, and it does not install spyware or any form of permanent software. Luckily, these setbacks didn't stop the album from being successful. Within just 1 month of its release, it became an officially certified platinum album with over 1 million copies sold. The album achieved gold certification in Canada, Australia, and the UK, pushing its total worldwide physical sales past 1.5 million copies. Then, on May 25, 2009, it was announced during an interview on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon that the name of their new album would be Hot Sauce Committee and was set for release on September 15th of the same year. Unfortunately, something bad would happen.
We're rolling? Okay. So, it's crazy.
It's not funny.
It's not funny. It's dead serious. So, the reason that we're here talking is because I have some pretty heavy news, I guess, to say. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to cancel a bunch of our shows coming up and actually push back our record release. Because recently, about 2 months ago, I started feeling this little like lump in my throat, like you would feel if you have like swollen glands or something like that, like you'd feel if you have a cold. And so I didn't really think it was anything, but then just recently when we were over in Europe doing promotion, I started to think I should talk to my doctor, and so I called my doctor and saw him when I got back. This was about 2 weeks ago, and he sent me to a specialist, and they did tests, and I actually have a form of cancer in the gland that's over here, and it's actually it's in a gland called the parotid gland, and it's also in a lymph node right in that area. So I'm actually going to have surgery probably next week coming up, and then after that have to have some radiation done localized in that area. But the good news is that they did scans of my whole body, and it's only localized in this one area, and it's not in a place that affects my voice, so that's nice, and
which is a plus.
That's convenient. So anyway, it's a little bit of a setback. It's a pain in the ass, but this is something that's very true.
Fans were stunned but hopeful and praying for his health. He underwent surgery and treatment while continuing to work whenever his health allowed. The band remained optimistic. The group also had to cancel their headlining gigs at various festivals. They delayed albums, postponed tours, and released updates whenever possible. The album was pushed back so far that the official release date was 2 years later on April 27, 2011. There were positive signs that Adam Yauch would recover. The Beastie Boys were inducted by Chuck D and LL Cool J on April 14, 2012. Adam Yauch was too sick to attend the ceremony, having been admitted to the New York Presbyterian Hospital the same day, but it was an honor well-deserved at this point. Unfortunately, 20 days later, on May 4, 2012, Adam Yauch died from cancer at the age of 47.
A major loss in the music business. Adam Yauch of the Beastie Boys has died after a long fight with cancer.
Thank you, Madam President. Adam Yauch, better known to music fans around the world as MCA of the Beastie Boys, passed away this month at the age of 40.
Very sad day. It's like
The Beastie Boys are legendary.
Well, you know, I heard the news. I woke up this morning and heard the news when I opened up my laptop, and I saw some emails from, you know, my people, my team, and you know, it hurts, man.
The news reverberated across the music world. Tributes poured in from artists across every genre, not just hip-hop, but rock, pop, punk, and electronic music. Many bands would continue after losing a member, but the Beastie Boys are not like most bands. In June 2014, Mike Diamond confirmed that he and Adam Horovitz would not make music under the Beastie Boys name. They believed the group could not exist without Adam Yauch. For them, the Beastie Boys had always been three friends who grew up together. Remove one, and the band no longer existed. Also, the founding Beastie Boys guitarist, John Barry, passed away on May 19, 2016, aged 52, as a result of frontotemporal dementia following several years of ill health. He was credited with naming the band and playing guitar on the first EP. The first Beastie Boys show took place at Barry's Law. In October 2018, Mike and Adam released a memoir, Beastie Boys Book, recounting events throughout the group's history. The book was adapted into a documentary on April 2020 titled Beastie Boys Story. The book and documentary were accompanied by the compilation album Beastie Boys Music, released in October 2020. Today, it's almost impossible to imagine modern music without the Beastie Boys. When they first appeared, hip-hop and rock were still treated as separate worlds. They helped prove those boundaries were artificial, inspiring artists from Rage Against the Machine and Limp Bizkit to Linkin Park, Eminem, and countless others to experiment freely across genres. The Beastie Boys have proven that they will always remain amongst the greatest of all time, and that'll never change. If you enjoyed uncovering the crazy world of the Beastie Boys, then click the video on your screen right now. It's another insane music story filled with enough controversy and twists that will leave you speechless. I'll see you over there. Peace.